Greetings all, welcome back to our series of videos about life in 11th ACR. Although in fairness, this particular video is good for anybody on the installation at all, be they a Blackhorse trooper or garrison or one of the OCs, what have you. Now, one of the problems of Fort Irwin is its geographic position, at least the reputation thereof, because, well, where will I decide to request my next assignment, or sometimes may not even get a choice in mind. You just open up the letter and says, hey, congratulations, you're PCSing to Fort Irwin. And then somebody in your family, probably the wife or the teenage kid or whatever, is going to say, where's Fort Irwin? And they will go to Google Maps and they will look it up and they will look in the satellite view and they realize it's in the middle of a desert. And they zoom out and they realize where it is in the middle of the desert. So if you don't know where Fort Irwin is, you can go to Google Maps. You'll see you start in the middle of nowhere, which is defined as Barstow. No offense to anybody who lives in Barstow. And then you drive north about 20 odd miles up a dead end road. There you hit Fort Irwin and the road stops. Great. This has some very obvious knock-on questions as to, well, what on earth do we do there? Because, again, you're miles from anywhere. Well, there are some advantages to living in Fort Irwin as well, considering where it is. If you zoom out even a little bit further, plus if you consider the training schedule that it has. So this video is, I guess, meant to reassure those of you who are considering going to Fort Irwin. It's actually not that bad.
What's living on Fort Irwin like?
It's a challenge in some aspects, but I can tell you that anything a soldier needs is on this installation. Now, there's areas that that many soldiers think that need to be improved, and I can assure you that the installation commander and sergeant major are doing a very, very good job of improving the quality of life on this installation.
So if I were a hard-charging, testosterone-laden 21-year-old male looking to make sure that he didn't lose any evidence of a social life, is that an issue given where we are?
Again, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. We like to say that we're in the center of everything. We have Vegas 2 hours away and we have LA 2 hours away. But another really important thing to address is the BOSS program that we have on this installation. In my 26 years in the Army, this installation has the best BOSS program, and there is something going on for a single soldier every single weekend.
For single soldiers especially, the BOSS program here, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's one of the best in the Army. We have a huge emphasis on the BOSS program here, better opportunities for single soldiers, and the program is run phenomenally here. There's always something to do. They're always doing something. They're always taking trips either down to the coast, to the beaches, or over to Vegas for trips like that, over to Big Bear. There's always something to do around. Of course, you got to travel a little ways, but like they tell you when you get here, this place is in the middle of everywhere. About 2.5 hours, you can go to Vegas from here. About same distance, you can go to Los Angeles. A few more hours, probably about 3.5, you can get down to San Diego. There's tons of places to go to. And being at a place like this, we have our rotation schedule about 2 years out. So we know when we're going to the box, we know when we're going to be having our days off, and it makes life easier for single soldiers and even married soldiers and their families to be able to plan out what they want to do with their time off.
Of course, the families are probably not going to be convinced by single soldiers and by other people wearing uniforms. So we simply shanghaied a group of family members who were nice enough to come in, and of course I'm not paid or anything, just sit down in front of the camera and talk to me about life on Fort Irwin for those who are not wearing the uniform.
First in the hot seat, I have Rebecca and Caitlin, and you are our neophytes to Army life on the base, although you say you've got a little bit of at least Army experience in the background, so you understand the terminology, perhaps.
Kind of.
Okay, so when we PCS or you get orders to come to a new station, obviously I presume you don't really have very much context for Fort Irwin or Army life in general, but Trooper Smith or Lieutenant Smith shows up and he's immediately told, report here, this is your boss, this is what you're doing, and it's actually very easy for him. What is the support structure like? What happens to the spouses who show up on the base and you don't know your way around and you haven't been told by anybody, maybe you've been told this is your house, God, go with God, good luck. But what actually happens?
Well, I have kids, so there's a ton of parks and a lot of places to take them. And I just found that putting myself out there and creating a community right off the bat was really helpful.
Okay.
And it's
You
just
put yourself
easier.
out there how? I mean, you just
Just talking to people.
Oh, just random people at the park?
Yep, just random people at the park. Going to the pool with the kids we got here in the summer, so we went to the pool every day. And you don't only see the people at the pool, you also run into them at the grocery store, the commissary. You run into them like everywhere you go. It's a very small post.
So you gotta have a good memory for faces then.
Yes, very good memory for faces, and just put yourself out there.
Okay, so you're showing up at the swimming pool, you're meeting friends, and it's purely ad hoc activities at this point, or have you encountered established activity groups, or let's say you're into car repair and you just throw yourself into the car repair club or something like that?
I think one thing that really helped us was I was actively looking for things to do, especially again being in the summer. What are we going to do? They can't go to school, stuff like that. So I was looking on the websites for activities. So the Villages puts out a lot of activities. There's a lot of different organizations that do things for families, for kids, for the spouse club, for the adults. So I was actively looking for those things to keep ourselves busy here and to meet other people that were also here.
What is Spouse Club?
The Military Spouse Club is an organization of the spouses. They're in every installation, and they just come together. They do mixers, they do clubs, and you just kind of, it's almost like a dating site. Like you go to a dating site to meet people to date. Well, everyone here wants to be friends. They want to meet new people. They want to make this relationship. So you seek out these things, and you're gonna make friends. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there.
That Spouses Club,
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity. There's also a lot of fun things involved in
Yeah.
it. There's a lot of sub-club groups. So there's a cooking club, there's book clubs.
I
there's
run the fitness club.
the fitness club, there's hiking clubs. There's a little something for everybody. So there's just so
Yeah.
much you can do on base. You can be as involved as you want to be.
As little or as
much,
yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
whatever your interest is, there's something on this post.
Yeah.
And if it's not here, it's really easy to make it.
Yeah.
MWR works very closely with spouses and making home-based businesses.
Yep.
We are so lucky to have so many incredible home-based businesses here.
Okay, so as the dad of a 5-year-old, I know all the things that my 5-year-old has to do in order to have a fulfilling life as a young one. So he does his gymnastics, he does his martial arts, all these things. When I grew up, I go riding and play tennis and do all those things like that. If there is a single biggest concern I would have about coming to Fort Irwin, it is the kids and what they can do and get up to. How old are your kids, and what do they do? How do you keep the energy levels down to a reasonable amount by burning them out doing activities or anything else?
So I have a 7 and an 8-year-old, and I will say this has been one of the best places for them because there's youth sports. They're involved in the Cub Scout on base. There's always things going on for kids, and the nature of this community is that the kids all get together and play outside. It's a very safe, enclosed, and very welcoming community, especially for kids. And that's one of the things I'm really going to miss when I leave here. It's one of the things that from prior bases, I've never seen it quite as kid-friendly, frankly.
Is it just because the housing area is so much smaller? I mean, if you compare with other bases where the housing areas are much larger and spread out?
Well, and this community works incredibly hard to make sure that the kids stay active and stay engaged. The youth sports program here is so much better than it was at Fort Benning or Fort Meade or Fort Campbell for that matter. And I think a big part of that is they know that there's not another choice. And so people are really invested in making this the best community possible and investing in our kids. And
There's like a billion parks here. They're like her kids, they're in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, sports. They do football, basketball.
So you just give them the bicycle and said, okay, go do your thing and just be back by dark?
Some days it's bicycle, some days I'm driving them here, driving them there, but everywhere's so close. So a lot of times they just walk because I don't have to worry about them getting hit by a car. I don't have to worry about them, you know, getting into trouble somewhere and not having somebody reach out and be like, hey, does anybody know who this kid is? Because this kid was out here doing this. So it's really good being so tight-knit as it is.
Mischievous. All right, so our two veterans now, and you're on duty station 16.
yes,
God help you. Versus this is number 7. So you've done this before a few times.
yes.
And so I already got the response from yourself when you found out you were coming to Fort Irwin. So how about yourself when your husband says, okay, we're going to Fort Irwin?
So for probably almost close to 20 years, my husband, he'd come here many times as a rotational unit. And I said, if you get Fort Irwin, you can go by yourself. Being from the Northeast, I said, I don't really want to live in the desert. And so we came out here as a little visit to see what it was like. And talking to people and just seeing the area, I was like, this won't be so bad. And so we've been here about 18 months and we've loved it.
Because I have to assume that exactly as you say, the rotational units come through, and I come back home to Fort Cavazos or Fort Bliss. It's kind of like, how was Fort Irwin, honey?
Yeah.
and that may affect your own preconceptions about the base.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
So what do you think Fort Irwin does better and worse than other bases that you've been to? I mean, every base probably has its good points.
So I think from a spouse perspective and having children, the predictability is probably number one. The thing that we as a family enjoy because and I know Kelsey mentioned it, you can plan. You can, spring break or 4 days or things like that. And our kids are involved in sports. And so if they have a game, we call it down the hill, closer towards LA, then we just plan it. If it happens around the same time as a 3 or a 4 day, we just plan our vacation around that. But we know it's going to happen. They protect those weekends. The block leave schedule is planned a year to 2 years out. And so you can look at stuff and you can plan stuff, you can buy tickets. All of those things, you can go visit family. So if you're from the East Coast and you want to go visit family over the holidays, you can plan and save for those types of trips well in advance.
How often do you get to see the spouse come back for lunch? I mean, I've driven around at Fort Hood, or what was then Fort Hood. It takes you a while to get from one end or to the other. Fort Bliss, lunch is a full hour prospect to get from one end of Fort Bliss to the other end of Fort Bliss.
So my husband comes home almost every day for lunch. So, I mean, it's 7.5 minutes door to door for him to drive. Again, we time things because we're bored. But, he comes home, he's able to be home way more than he ever has before. So I'm not going to lie, we're going to be sad to leave here this summer. Mm-hmm. But, they're able to be home. Everything is so close. Everything, if you need them to stop by the commissary on the way home, anything, you can walk to anywhere on post. It's a really nice, small place. It's pretty convenient.
Do you think there's any other misconceptions about 11th Cav that are out there that you think should be stamped out?
You definitely will not have the same experience you would if you were RTU.
Yeah,
Definitely not going to have the same experience. Definitely. Yeah. I don't know.
I posted up on my Facebook when it was come up here. I took the photograph of Fort Irwin Road sign. I said, hey, guess where I am? And all these guys are just coming on and go, oh, I was there in '89 and I hated it or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, our conversation before this started, you mentioned that a lot has changed from 2000 to 2010, the mass difference of the installation. Those who've made that comment before, it was probably a lot harder, for a soldier and for families to be here. a lot's grown since then.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see. I've been around a while, and I was first here from 2000 to about 2012, and I could see the massive difference in the increase in infrastructure over that period of time. And it's been improving ever since.
And it's
so, like,
constantly growing.
Like you got family housing, new family housing has come along since I was there, which looked very nice, I have to say. I'd live in it.
Yep. And we have great, the installation has great partnership with Michaels, who's in charge of all the privatized housing, and they constantly are improving housing for all the residents on this installation.
What's the housing like compared to other bases? I mean, are the contractors responsive at fixing things compared to other bases, or about average?
I would say about average. Most military installations we've been at, about 60 to 70% of your population lives off post. And so they may have more housing, but they house less people, if that makes any sense.
Smaller proportion.
Yeah, and so here, 99% of your population lives on post, and they're working very hard. Sometimes residents don't always see what they're working on or what they're trying to improve, but I'm confident that they're working as best they can. You know, obviously things cost money, and things cost a lot more than they did when they, first installed them. And so they're trying really hard to make improvements.
And the housing also does community-wide events
Yes.
that are pretty fun each year, and they're pretty involved with the community. Most of the people who work at housing are spouses of soldiers here on base, so it's a pretty...
Yeah, they have a pool that any resident can go to, and you don't have to pay for it.
Gotcha.
So that's really nice. And they have community centers here that you can rent to have your kids' birthday parties, or if you just want to have, any sort of event you can have there, you can rent there. And so that's really nice too.
I will say that we were talking about what our next steps are, and I almost wanted to stay here longer for the kids, because the level of freedom that they have here, they're not going to have anywhere else in the country that we go right now. Like, they're living in a time that, like, maybe we had close to as a kid. They have so much freedom. Like, I can call my friend and say, hey, what are you doing? Or my kids are driving me crazy. Can you send yours over? And vice versa. And they'll literally just walk up the street, and I watch them, and then she'll say, hey, they're here. Or, we'll like all go to the park, and they'll just hang out while the parents are chatting. And it's just the level of freedom they have is just, this day and age is unreal.
Okay, so hopefully you've got a fair idea of what goes on. So, bad news, yeah, you gotta drive at least 2 hours to get anywhere notable. Good news, you get regularly scheduled weekends, long weekends that you can plan around, which, as mentioned, is kind of rare in the Army these days. And you can go anywhere from the deserts to the beach. You can go skiing on Saturday, you can go surfing on Sunday. Not many bases will allow you that opportunity. Are there challenges? Yes. We couldn't find a good restaurant on post to have a nice dinner. So if you want to go on a dinner date with the wife, you're going to have to get a babysitter for quite a few hours while you could drive down to Barstow or wherever, have your dinner and come back. Outside of that, though, it's got pretty much everything you need. Oh well. There are, of course, more videos to come from Fort Irwin, so stay tuned, hit the subscribe button. I'll talk to you then.